Claire Sterling had it all: power, wealth, and a five-star hotel empire at her fingertips. Every morning, she walked past the man who kept her world running, and every morning, she made sure he knew he was invisible. But on the night of the most important gala of her life, when the lights went out and the crowd turned savage, the invisible man became her only hope for survival. What she discovered in the darkness would shatter everything she thought she knew about worth, about love, and about the man she'd spent years looking down on. By dawn, the heiress who once fired people with a signature would be fighting to save the job of the janitor who saved her life, and risking everything to prove that some falls are worth taking. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this story will change how you see the people you walk past every single day. The morning sun hadn't even cleared the Chicago skyline when Claire Sterling pushed through the revolving doors of the Sterling Grand Hotel. Her heels clicked against the marble floor like a metronome, keeping time with the anxiety that never seemed to leave her chest. She was 28 years old and exhausted. The lobby was quiet at 6 in the morning, just the way she liked it. No guests to smile at, no staff asking questions she didn't have time to answer. Just her and the checklist burning a hole in her mind. Tonight was the winter gala. Tonight, her father would be watching. Tonight, everything had to be perfect. Claire stopped in the center of the lobby and turned in a slow circle, her eyes scanning every surface. The chandeliers sparkled. The marble gleamed. The flowers on the reception desk looked fresh and expensive, just like they should. But then she saw it. On the tall windows facing Michigan Avenue, there was a mark, a smudge. Right there in the middle of the glass, catching the early light. Claire's jaw tightened. She'd been specific in her email last night. Crystal clear windows. No exceptions. She looked around and spotted him almost immediately. Marcus Thorne stood on a ladder near the far window, a squeegee in his hand. He wore the dark blue maintenance uniform with his name stitched across the chest. His movements were careful and methodical as he worked. Claire crossed the lobby quickly, her heels echoing in the empty space. "Excuse me," she called up. Marcus looked down. His face was calm, patient. He had the kind of eyes that seemed to notice everything but say nothing. "Yes, ma'am?" His voice was deep and even. Claire pointed at the window behind him. "That smudge, right there. I need it gone before the guests start arriving." Marcus climbed down the ladder with an easy grace. He was tall, built solid from years of physical work. He walked over to the window she'd indicated and examined it closely. "Miss Sterling," he said quietly, "that's not a smudge." "Then what is it?" "It's a stress fracture in the glass. I've been monitoring it for the past 3 weeks. I sent you a report about it last month." Claire felt heat rise in her face. She didn't remember any report. She barely had time to read half the emails that came through her office. "I don't care what it is," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "I need it to look perfect. Tonight is the most important event of the year. Find a way to make it invisible." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." "And please," Claire added, already turning away, "try to stay out of sight tonight. The guests don't need to see maintenance staff during the gala." She didn't wait for his response. She was already walking toward the elevators, her phone buzzing in her hand. Behind her, Marcus watched her go. His jaw was tight, but his face remained calm. He'd learned a long time ago that showing anger cost more than it was worth. He picked up his supplies and headed for the service elevator. The basement of the Sterling Grand was a different world. Down here, there was no marble or crystal, just concrete floors, exposed pipes, and the constant hum of machinery that kept the hotel alive. This was where the real work happened. The work nobody wanted to see. Marcus pushed open the door to the maintenance office and found Mrs. Higgins already there, pouring coffee from a battered pot. "Morning, Marcus," she said warmly. Mrs. Higgins had been head of housekeeping for 20 years. She had kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She treated Marcus like the son she'd never had. "Morning, Mrs. H?" Marcus set his tool belt on the desk and sat down heavily in the old office chair. "Rough start?" she asked, handing him a cup of coffee. "Same as always." Marcus took a sip. It was terrible coffee, but it was hot and strong, and that was enough. Mrs. Higgins studied his face. "Let me guess. Miss Sterling?" Marcus nodded. "She wanted me to make a structural crack disappear. Told me to stay. Invisible tonight." Mrs. Higgins sighed. "That girl doesn't know what she doesn't know. Her father raised her to see dollar signs, not people." "Not my problem." Marcus turned to his computer and pulled up the weather report. What he saw made his stomach drop. A massive storm system was heading straight for Chicago. The meteorologists were calling it historic. Blizzard conditions, wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. And it was supposed to hit right around evening. Marcus clicked over to the hotel's system monitors. The heating units were already running at 80% capacity just to keep up with the cold snap they'd been having. If the storm hit and the power grid got stressed, the old electrical system in this building would be in serious trouble. He pulled up a blank email and started typing. To Claire Sterling. Subject: urgent system failure risk. Miss Sterling, the weather forecast shows a major blizzard hitting Chicago tonight during the gala. Our electrical system is already at capacity. The main breaker is showing stress signs. I strongly recommend we reduce power load tonight by dimming non-essential lighting and postponing the event if possible. This is not a minor concern. If the grid fails during the gala, we could lose all power, including emergency systems. Marcus Thorne, head of maintenance. He read it over once, then hit send. Marcus stared at the screen for a moment, then shook his head. She wouldn't read it. She never did. He grabbed his tool belt and stood up. "I'm going to check the pressure valves. If tonight goes bad, I want to know I did everything I could." Mrs. Higgins touched his arm gently. "You're a good man, Marcus. Don't let them make you forget that." Marcus managed a small smile. "I'll try." He headed out into the maze of tunnels beneath the hotel, his flashlight cutting through the dimness. Up above, people slept in $1,000-a-night rooms. Down here, Marcus kept the beast running. Most days, that was enough. By 10 in the morning, Claire's office looked like a war zone. Flower arrangements covered every surface. A wedding planner was arguing with a lighting designer. The catering manager kept calling about the ice sculptures. And Claire's father was due to arrive any minute. Claire sat at her desk, trying to breathe. Her computer dinged with an email notification. She glanced at it. Marcus Thorne. Urgent. System failure risk. Claire's finger hovered over the mouse. Then she deleted it without opening it. She didn't have time for maintenance drama. Marcus was probably just making excuses for the crack in the window. He was always complaining about something: the budget, the equipment, the supplies. It was exhausting. The office door opened without a knock. Elias Sterling walked in like he owned the place, which, technically, he did. He was 65, but looked 50. Silver hair perfectly styled, a suit that cost more than most people made in a month. Everything about him said power. "Claire." He didn't smile. He never smiled. "Dad." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Everything's on track. The RSVPs are at 98%. The mayor confirmed. I don't need a status report," Elias interrupted. "I need a guarantee. The board is watching tonight. This gala has to be flawless." Claire felt her chest tighten. It will be. It had better be. Elias looked around the chaotic office with distaste. Do you know what's at stake here? I've spent 40 years building this brand. If you can't handle one event, you can't handle running this company. The words hit like a slap. Claire forced herself to stay calm. I won't let you down. You already have. Multiple times. Tonight is your last chance to prove your sterling material. He turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and keep the staff out of sight. Guests don't pay premium prices to see the help. He left without another word. Claire sank back into her chair, her hands shaking. Her phone buzzed, a text from Preston, her fiancé, running late. Might miss the walkthrough. You'll be fine. Love you. She stared at the message. Preston was an investment banker with perfect hair and an expensive watch. He looked good in photos. He said the right things at parties. He was exactly who she was supposed to marry. So why did she feel so alone? Claire pushed the thought away and stood up. She had work to do. Outside her window, the first snowflakes started to fall. By 6 o'clock that evening, the Sterling Grand had transformed into a winter palace. The ballroom glittered with 1,000 points of light. Ice sculptures shaped like swans gleamed on marble pedestals. Women in evening gowns and men in tuxedos filled the space with laughter and champagne glasses. Claire stood near the entrance in a silver dress that cost more than most people's rent. She smiled until her face hurt. She shook hands until her fingers went numb. Everything was perfect. Except outside, the wind was starting to howl. Snow fell so thick it looked like a white curtain against the windows. The storm had arrived right on schedule. Claire tried not to think about it. Inside, it was warm and bright and beautiful. That was all that mattered. She made her way through the crowd, greeting the mayor, thanking the sponsors, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. This was her world. She was good at this. Then she saw Marcus. He was standing in the shadows near the service hallway, holding a radio. He looked out of place in his maintenance uniform, a dark figure at the edge of all the light. For a moment, their eyes met across the room. Marcus's expression was calm but concerned. He touched his radio and spoke into it quietly. Claire looked away quickly. She didn't have time to deal with whatever he was worried about. Preston appeared at her elbow, smelling like expensive cologne. You look tense, darling. Relax. Everything's fine. I know, Claire said, but her eyes drifted back to where Marcus had been standing. He was gone. The lights flickered. It was just for a second, barely noticeable. But Claire noticed. Her heart started to beat faster. The chandelier above them swayed slightly. The microphone on the podium let out a brief screech of feedback. What was that? Someone near her asked. Nothing, Claire said automatically. Just the storm affecting the power grid. Everything's fine. But her hands were cold. Across the room, she saw Marcus emerge from the service hallway again. This time, he was walking straight toward her, cutting through the crowd with purpose. People stepped aside for him automatically. Something about the way he moved made them notice. Miss Sterling. He stopped in front of her, respectful but firm. I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Preston stepped between them. Excuse me, we're in the middle of an event. Whatever it is can wait. Marcus didn't even look at Preston. His eyes stayed on Claire. No, sir, it can't. Claire felt everyone watching. This was exactly what she didn't need. A scene, drama. Her father was somewhere in this crowd. What is it? She asked quietly. The main breaker is overloading. The heating system and the event lighting are drawing too much power. I'm reading dangerous levels. We need to dim the lights or shut down some systems before. Before what? Preston interrupted. Before you ruin the biggest night of the year with your paranoia? Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. Before the whole system fails. Claire looked around. The room was perfect. The guests were happy. Her father was watching. She made a decision. Marcus, I appreciate your concern, but we've had this discussion before. You're always predicting disasters that never happen. Please just monitor the systems and let me focus on the event. Ms. Sterling, that's all. Claire turned away from him. Please return to your duties. For a long moment, Marcus didn't move. Then he nodded once, his face unreadable. Yes, ma'am, he said quietly. I tried. He walked away, disappearing back into the shadows. Preston laughed. These people really don't know their place, do they? Claire didn't answer. She was watching Marcus's back as he left, and something uncomfortable twisted in her chest. But then her father caught her eye from across the room. He nodded toward the podium. It was time for her speech. Claire took a deep breath and walked toward the microphone, leaving Marcus's warning behind. Claire stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight, despite the weather. She smiled, and people laughed politely. The Sterling Grand has stood in this city for over 100 years, through storms and challenges of all kinds. We have an unshakable foundation, built by people who believed in excellence, in service, in a sound cut through her words, a deep, metallic pop that seemed to come from inside the walls. The chandelier, directly above the crowd, swayed violently. The microphone screeched, a high-pitched wail that made people cover their ears. Then everything went dark. Not dim, not gradual. Complete, absolute darkness. For one heartbeat, there was silence. Then the screaming started. Claire froze at the podium, suddenly blind. The darkness was so thick it felt solid. Around her, she heard chaos, glass shattering, people shouting, the sound of expensive shoes running across marble. Everyone remain calm! She tried to yell, but her voice was lost in the noise. Someone shoved past her hard. Claire stumbled in her heels, her ankle twisting painfully. She fell, hitting the floor with a shock of pain that took her breath away. People were running. She could feel them, a stampede in the dark, and she was on the ground in the middle of it. Preston! She screamed. Preston, help me! But there was no answer. A foot stepped on her hand. She cried out and tried to pull herself against the wall, but her ankle wouldn't support her weight. This was it. She was going to be trampled at her own event. After everything, this was how it would end. Then a light cut through the darkness. A strong beam from a heavy-duty flashlight, and a hand reached down through the chaos, finding her arm with certainty. Miss Sterling, the voice was calm in the madness, steady. Take my hand. It was Marcus. Claire grabbed his hand like a lifeline. He pulled her up with one smooth motion, strong enough to lift her completely off the ground. He immediately positioned himself between her and the panicking crowd, his body a shield. The exits are jammed, he said close to her ear. Electronic locks engaged when the power failed. Security protocol. This room is a trap right now. What do we do? Claire's voice shook. Hold on to me. Marcus wrapped one arm around her waist, supporting her injured ankle, and began moving through the crowd with the flashlight in his other hand. People were still shoving, trying to force doors that wouldn't open. Marcus moved with purpose toward a section of wall that looked solid. He kicked hard, and a panel swung inward. A service door, hidden in the wall's design. He pulled Claire through into a quiet corridor beyond. The sound of screaming became muffled as the heavy door swung shut behind them. Suddenly, there was silence. Claire stood in the dim emergency lighting of the service hall, breathing hard. Her dress was torn, her ankle throbbed, her carefully styled hair had come loose. Marcus released her gently, making sure she could stand. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Claire looked up at him. In the strange light, his face was all sharp angles and shadows, but his eyes were concerned, human. "My ankle," she managed. "I think I twisted it." Marcus knelt down without asking permission and carefully examined her foot. His hands were gentle, professional. "It's swelling," he said, "but I don't think it's broken. Can you walk?" "I don't know. What's happening? Where's Preston? Where's everyone?" "Your fiancé ran for the kitchen exit the second the lights went out. Last I saw, he was gone. As for everyone else, they're trapped in the ballroom until I can get the backup generators running." Claire felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Preston left?" Marcus stood up. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. "How long until the power comes back?" Claire asked. "That depends." Marcus pulled a radio from his belt and tried it. Static. "The main grid is fried. The backup generators in the sub-basement should have kicked on automatically, but they didn't, which means something's wrong down there. I need to go manually restart them." "How long will that take?" "An hour, maybe 2, depends on what the problem is." Marcus looked at her seriously. "But Ms. Sterling, you need to understand something. The temperature in this building is going to drop fast. We've got elderly people upstairs. If I don't get the heat back on, people could be in real danger." Claire felt the weight of his words. "Then go. Hurry." "I need to get you somewhere safe first." "I'm fine here." Marcus shook his head. "This corridor gets pitch black when the emergency lights die, and their batteries only last about 20 minutes. You can't stay here alone in the dark." "Then what do you suggest?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "The only way to the generators is through the sub-basement tunnels. The main stairs are probably blocked with people trying to get out. But I know another route. It's not pretty, and it's not easy, but it's the only option." "You want me to come with you?" Claire stared at him. "Into the basement?" "I'm giving you a choice, Ms. Sterling. You can stay here in the dark alone, or you can come with me. But I need to move now." Claire looked at the door behind them, where hundreds of people were trapped and frightened. She thought about her father somewhere in that darkness. She thought about Preston, who had run. She looked at Marcus, who had stayed, who had pulled her from the crowd when no one else did. "I'm coming with you," she said. Marcus nodded. "Then you need to lose the heels." Claire looked down at her expensive designer shoes. Then, without hesitating, she reached down and pulled them off. The concrete floor was cold against her bare feet. "Stay close to me," Marcus said. "And whatever happens, don't let go." He offered his arm. Claire took it. Together they moved deeper into the darkness. The service stairwell was colder than Claire expected. Each step down made the temperature drop. Her bare feet felt like ice against the concrete. The silver dress that had looked so perfect an hour ago now seemed ridiculous. Thin fabric that did nothing against the chill. Marcus noticed her shivering. He stopped on the landing, between floors, and shrugged off his work jacket. "Here," he said, holding it out. "You'll be cold," Claire protested. "I've worked in worse." His voice was matter-of-fact. "Take it." Claire pulled the jacket around her shoulders. It smelled like clean laundry and something else, something warm and solid. The fabric was still warm from his body. "Thank you," she said quietly. Marcus just nodded and started down the stairs again, his flashlight cutting a narrow path through the darkness. Claire held onto the railing and tried to keep up. Her ankle throbbed with each step. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. After 3 flights, Marcus stopped and looked back at her. "How's the ankle?" "Fine," Claire lied. Marcus studied her face for a moment. Then, without a word, he moved closer and offered his arm again. Claire hesitated. She'd never actually touched him before today. Never been close enough to notice the careful way he moved or how steady his presence felt. She took his arm. They descended together, slower now, but more stable. Claire found herself leaning on him more than she wanted to admit. "How far down are we going?" she asked. 10 floors below street level. The main generator is in sub-basement too." "I didn't even know this building went down that far." "Most people don't." Marcus's voice echoed in the stairwell. The Sterling Grand was built in 1924. Back then, they put everything important underground. Generators, boilers, water systems. It's like a whole other building down there. "And you know all of it?" "Every pipe, every wire, every valve. Been working here 5 years. Before that, I was a combat engineer in the Army. When you spend enough time keeping systems alive, you start to understand them." Claire absorbed this information. She realized she'd never asked Marcus anything about his life. Never wondered about the man behind the uniform. They reached the 4th floor landing. Marcus tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Blocked," he said. He studied the stairwell below them with his flashlight. "The stairs are blocked too. Debris from the ceiling." "So what do we do?" Marcus thought for a moment. "We go through the 4th floor and find another way down. Come on." He forced the door open with his shoulder. They stepped into complete darkness. Marcus swept his flashlight across the space. Rows of industrial washing machines loomed like sleeping giants. The laundry room. Claire felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. The massive machines cast strange shadows. Every sound echoed. "I don't like this," she whispered. "Stay close." Marcus moved forward carefully, testing each step. They wove between the machines. Claire's bare feet found puddles of cold water on the floor. She gasped at the shock of it. "Sorry," Marcus said. "These rooms leak sometimes." "It's fine, I'm fine." But her voice shook, and they both knew it. Halfway across the room, something crashed in the darkness behind them. Claire jumped, grabbing Marcus's arm with both hands. "What was that?" Marcus turned his light back. A ventilation cover had fallen from the wall, clattering to the floor. "Just the building settling," he said. "The temperature change makes things expand and contract." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He looked down at her hands, still gripping his arm. His voice softened. "Hey, you're safe with me. I promise." Claire realized how tightly she was holding on to him. She started to let go, embarrassed. But Marcus just shifted his arm so she could hold on more comfortably. "It's okay," he said. "This is scary. You don't have to pretend it's not." Something about his calm acceptance made Claire's throat tight. When was the last time someone had told her it was okay to be scared? They reached the far wall. Marcus examined it with his flashlight until he found what he was looking for. A metal panel set into the concrete. "Freight elevator shaft," he explained. He pulled a screwdriver from his belt and worked at the screws. "The elevator cars are stuck without power, but we can climb down the ladder inside." The panel came free. Marcus pulled it aside, revealing darkness and the faint smell of machine oil. Claire looked into the shaft. Her stomach dropped. "You want me to climb down that?" "It's the only way." Marcus secured his flashlight to his belt and tested the metal ladder that ran down the shaft. "I'll go first. If you slip, I'll catch you." "If I slip, we'll both fall." "Then don't slip." He gave her a small smile. It was the first time she'd seen him smile, and it transformed his serious face completely. "You're tougher than you think, Miss Sterling. You made it this far." Claire looked at the ladder, then at Marcus, then back at the ladder. "Okay," she said, "but if I die, I'm haunting you." Marcus's smile widened just a fraction. "Fair enough." He swung himself into the shaft with practiced ease and started climbing down. After a few rungs, he looked up at her. "Your turn. Go slow. Keep 3 points of contact, 2 hands and a foot, or 2 feet and a hand. Don't look down." Claire took a deep breath. Then she sat on the edge of the opening and carefully found the ladder with her bare feet. The metal was freezing, her dress tangled around her legs. Every instinct screamed at her to stop. But Marcus was right below her, steady and sure. "That's it," he said quietly. "1 rung at a time." Claire climbed down. Her arms shook. Her injured ankle protested every step. But she kept going. They were about halfway down when her foot slipped. Her bare sole couldn't get traction on the icy metal. She fell. For one terrible second, she was falling through darkness. Then strong hands caught her. Marcus had anticipated her fall. He'd braced himself and caught her against the ladder, his arms forming a cage around her body. They froze like that, breathing hard. Claire's face was inches from his. She could feel his heart beating fast beneath his shirt. "I've got you," Marcus said. His voice was steady, but his eyes were intense. "I've got you." Claire couldn't speak. She just nodded. "Can you grab the ladder again?" he asked. Slowly, carefully, Claire found her grip. Marcus held her steady until she was secure, then repositioned himself below her. "We're almost there," he said. "Just a little further." They finished the climb in silence. When Claire's feet finally touched solid ground, her legs nearly gave out. Marcus steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "You did good." Claire looked up at the dark shaft they'd just descended. Her hands were shaking. "I can't believe I just did that." "You're stronger than you know." They were standing very close. In the dim light from Marcus's flashlight, Claire could see details she'd never noticed before. The scar along his jawline, the silver at his temples, the kindness in his eyes that he tried to hide behind professionalism. This man had saved her, twice now, and she'd never even thanked him. "Marcus," she started, but he was already moving, checking a door in the wall. "Generator room should be just through here." The moment passed. They stepped into a tunnel that was noticeably warmer. Steam pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping condensation. The walls were brick, old and stained. "What is this place?" Claire asked. "The steam tunnels. They were built to heat the original building. Most of them are sealed off now, but this one's still active." Marcus navigated carefully, avoiding the worst of the puddles. "Watch your step. It's slippery." They moved through the narrow passage. The heat was almost overwhelming after the cold. Claire's dress clung to her skin. Her carefully styled hair fell in damp strands around her face. She must look terrible, like something from a horror movie. A pipe overhead hissed and rattled. Claire flinched. "It's okay," Marcus said, just the pressure adjusting. But then there was another sound, louder. A groaning, screaming sound of metal under stress. Marcus's head snapped up. "Run!" He grabbed Claire's hand and pulled her forward just as a pipe burst behind them. Scalding steam exploded into the tunnel with a roar. They ran. Claire ignored the pain in her ankle, ignored the heat, ignored everything except Marcus's hand pulling her to safety. They burst through a doorway and Marcus slammed it shut behind them. The door was heavy metal, built to contain exactly this kind of disaster. They collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Claire looked at Marcus and saw red, angry burns on his arm where the steam had caught him. "Oh my God, you're hurt!" "It's nothing." But his jaw was tight with pain. "Let me see." Claire didn't wait for permission. She carefully examined his arm. The burns were serious, blistered and raw. Tears filled her eyes. "This is my fault." "What?" "All of this. The power failure, the danger, everything. You tried to warn me. You sent me an email. You came to tell me in person, and I wouldn't listen." Her voice broke. "You tried to tell me about the crack in the window, and I treated you like you were stupid. You tried to save everyone, and I told you to stay invisible." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Mr. Sterling." "Claire, please, just call me Claire." He studied her face. "Claire, what's happening tonight isn't your fault. The infrastructure in this building has been failing for years. I've been sending reports for months. The cheap parts, the cut corners, the ignored maintenance, none of that was your decision. But I'm the director. I should have known." "You didn't want to know." His voice was gentle but honest. "And I get it. You had a lot of pressure on you. Your father, the board, this perfect image you had to maintain. But Claire, you can't run a building on image. At some point, you have to look at what's really there." Claire wiped her eyes, leaving streaks of mascara on her hands. "The window, you said it was a stress fracture." "Yeah. That means the glass was cracking, the structure was failing." "Yes. And I told you to make it invisible." Claire laughed, but it came out as a sob. "God, I'm such an idiot." "You're not an idiot. You're just learning." Marcus hesitated, then added, "We all have to learn sometime." Claire looked at his burned arm. Without thinking, she started to unbutton her dress. Marcus's eyes widened. "What are you—" "Relax." Claire tore a strip of fabric from her inner slip. "I need something to wrap your arm." She worked carefully, winding the silk around his burns as gently as she could. Marcus watched her face as she concentrated. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes, I do." Claire tied off the makeshift bandage. "You keep saving me. The least I can do is try to take care of you too." Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus cleared his throat and stood up. "We should keep moving. The generator room is just ahead." He helped Claire to her feet. Her ankle was worse now, swollen and painful. She tried to hide her limp, but Marcus noticed immediately. "Here." He shifted position, putting her arm around his shoulders and supporting her weight. "Lean on me." "I'm too heavy." "You're not." His voice was firm. "Trust me." So Claire did. She leaned on him, and they walked together through the last section of tunnel. The generator room was enormous. Massive turbines filled the space, silent and cold. Control panels lined the walls, their screens dark. Everything smelled like oil and metal. Marcus helped Claire to a bench, then approached the main console. "The system should have kicked on automatically," he muttered, examining the gauges. He opened an access panel and froze. "What is it?" Claire asked. Marcus reached in and pulled out a piece of metal. He held it up to his flashlight. "This is the main safety valve. It controls the fuel flow to the generator. Okay?" "It's made of plastic." Claire blinked. "What?" "This part is supposed to be reinforced steel. It's under massive pressure, but this—" He turned it over in his hands. "This is just cheap plastic. It's sheared right off." He walked over to a logbook hanging on the wall and flipped through it. His face hardened. "What does it say?" Claire came over, limping. Marcus pointed to an entry from 3 months ago. Request for replacement safety valve, steel reinforced. Cost, $500. Status, denied. Reason, budget constraints. Signed, Elias Sterling. Claire stared at her father's signature. He knew, she whispered. He knew this part was wrong, and he didn't fix it. $500, Marcus said quietly. That's what your father thought was too expensive to keep people safe. But that chandelier in the ballroom, the one that cost $200,000, that was worth it. Claire felt sick. How many other things are like this? How many other corners did he cut? A lot. Marcus's voice was flat. I have files full of denied maintenance requests. Every time I try to do the right thing, I get told the budget doesn't allow it. I'm so sorry. It's not your apology to make. Marcus set the broken valve down. But right now, we have a bigger problem. Without this valve, I can't start the generator the normal way. So what do we do? Marcus studied the massive machine. We improvise. It's going to be complicated, and I'm going to need your help. Me? I don't know anything about generators. You're about to learn. Marcus started pulling tools from a cabinet. I need to bypass the valve completely and wire the ignition directly. But I can't do it alone. I need someone to hold the connection steady while I work. He explained what they needed to do. Claire listened carefully, trying to understand. Won't that be dangerous? She asked. Probably, but staying in the dark is more dangerous. He handed her a heavy wrench. Can you do this? Claire looked at the wrench, then at the generator, then at Marcus. A few hours ago, she would have said no. She would have insisted this wasn't her job. She would have stayed clean and let someone else handle it. But that version of Claire was gone. Tell me what to do, she said. For the next hour, Claire learned more about generators than she'd ever imagined knowing. Marcus guided her hands, teaching her where to grip, how much pressure to apply, when to turn, and when to hold steady. His instructions were clear and patient. Claire's arms ached. Sweat ran down her face. Her dress was ruined beyond recognition, covered in grease and torn in a dozen places. She'd never felt more useful in her life. That's it, Marcus said, his own hands deep in the machine's guts. Keep that steady, just a little more. Claire held the wrench firm, her muscles screaming. Perfect. Now on 3, turn it clockwise as hard as you can. 1, 2, 3! They both cranked their wrenches at the same time. Something deep in the generator clicked. Then it roared to life. The sound was deafening. The whole room vibrated, and then, like magic, lights flickered on overhead. Claire and Marcus stood frozen, covered in grease and sweat, staring at each other in the sudden brightness. Then Marcus started to laugh. It was a real laugh, deep and genuine. Claire had never heard him laugh before. She started laughing too, from relief, from exhaustion, from the sheer impossibility of what they'd just done. We did it, she said. We did it, Marcus agreed. Without thinking, Claire threw her arms around him. Marcus went still for a moment. Then his arms came up around her, holding her close. They stayed like that. 2 people covered in dirt and grease, holding each other in the bright light of their victory. Claire pulled back slightly to look up at him. Their faces were inches apart. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. For saving me. For teaching me. For not giving up on me even when I was terrible to you. Claire, I mean it. You're the best person I know, and I've been too blind to see it. Marcus's eyes searched her face. His hand came up to gently brush a streak of grease from her cheek. You're not blind anymore, he said softly. The moment stretched between them, electric and impossible. Then the door burst open. Security guards poured in, flashlights sweeping the room. And right behind them came Preston, his expensive suit somehow still perfect. "Claire!" Preston rushed forward, physically pushing Marcus aside. "Thank God you're safe. I've been organizing rescue efforts all night." Marcus stumbled back, his arms falling away from Claire. Claire tried to reach for him, but Preston was already pulling her toward the door. "Come on, darling. Let's get you cleaned up. The guests are starting to calm down. We need to do damage control." "Wait." Claire looked back at Marcus. He stood, alone in the generator room, grease-stained and burned, looking exactly like what he was. Maintenance staff. The help. Their eyes met one last time. Then Claire was swept away by the crowd of people in expensive clothes, all talking at once, all pulling her back to the world she came from. The door closed. Marcus was alone again, surrounded by machines that didn't judge him and work that never ended. He looked down at his burned arm, wrapped in torn silk from her dress. Then he went back to work. The lobby of the Sterling Grand looked like the aftermath of a battle. Guests wrapped in hotel blankets huddled in groups, some crying, some angry, all talking at once. Paramedics checked elderly people for hypothermia. Hotel staff ran in every direction, trying to restore order. Claire stood in the center of it all, feeling like a ghost. Preston had draped his jacket over her ruined dress. Someone had brought her shoes, different ones since hers were lost somewhere in the darkness below. A makeup artist was dabbing at her face, trying to make her presentable, but Claire couldn't focus on any of it. She kept thinking about Marcus, alone in that generator room. "Ms. Sterling?" A reporter shoved a microphone in her face. "Can you comment on what caused the catastrophic power failure?" Preston stepped in smoothly. "The Sterling Grand experienced an unprecedented weather event tonight. Thanks to the quick thinking of our management team, we were able to restore power and ensure everyone's safety. No one was seriously injured, which speaks to the excellent emergency protocols we have in place." Claire stared at him. "Management team?" "Of course." Preston smiled at the camera. "I personally coordinated the rescue efforts from the command center." "You ran," Claire said quietly. Preston's smile didn't falter. "I went to get help, darling. Strategic thinking." More reporters pushed forward. Preston kept talking, spinning the disaster into a story of heroic management and corporate responsibility. Not once did he mention Marcus. Claire's father appeared at her elbow, his face carved from ice. "My office," Elias said. "Now." The executive suite was on the top floor, as far from the basement as physically possible. Claire sat in a leather chair while her father paced behind his desk. The room was silent except for the distant sound of wind against the windows. "Do you have any idea what this will cost us?" Elias said finally. "The lawsuits? The bad press? The damage to our reputation?" "People could have died," Claire said. "But they didn't, so now we control the narrative." Elias opened a folder and pushed it across the desk. "The PR team has prepared a statement. The official story is that a freak storm overwhelmed the city's power grid. An act of God. No one's fault." Claire looked at the papers. "That's not what happened." "That's exactly what happened." "No." Claire's voice was steady. "What happened is that you cut corners on safety. You refused to replace critical parts because you wanted to save money for cosmetic upgrades. And when the system failed, the only reason people didn't freeze to death was because Marcus Thorne knew how to fix what you broke." Elias's eyes narrowed. "The janitor. The head of maintenance, the combat engineer. The man who's been sending you warnings for months that you ignored. Watch your tone with me, Claire." "Or what? You'll fire me? Cut me off?" Claire stood up, her ruined dress still covered in grease. Go ahead. I don't care anymore. Elias studied her like she was a stranger. What happened to you tonight? I woke up. Claire met his eyes without flinching. I spent years trying to be what you wanted. Perfect. Controlled. Willing to ignore anything uncomfortable. But you know what? While I was down in that basement getting my hands dirty, I was more useful than I've ever been in this office. You're being emotional. I'm being honest. Claire took a breath. Marcus saved my life tonight. He saved everyone's life, and you want to make him invisible. Elias's expression hardened. This situation requires a scapegoat. Someone needs to take responsibility for the failure. The maintenance department is the obvious choice. Claire felt ice in her veins. You want to blame Marcus? I want to protect this company, and if that means... No. The word came out like a gunshot. Elias raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? I said no. You're not firing him. You're not blaming him. In fact, you're going to do the opposite. And why would I do that? Claire picked up the folder from his desk. Inside were termination papers with Marcus's name already filled in. She tore them in half. Because if you don't, she said quietly, I will go to every reporter downstairs and tell them exactly what happened. I will show them the maintenance logs. I will explain how you denied a $500 repair that caused this disaster. I will make sure everyone knows that Marcus Thorne is a hero and you are the one who put lives at risk. Father and daughter stared at each other across the desk. You wouldn't, Elias said. Try me. For the first time in Claire's life, she saw doubt in her father's eyes. You're throwing away your career? He said. Your inheritance? Your future? For what? A man who cleans toilets? For what's right. Claire's voice didn't waver. Something you never taught me. Elias sat down heavily. He looked older suddenly, tired. Get out of my office, he said. Claire walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. I quit. Find someone else to run your hotel. I'm done. She left without looking back. The sun was rising when Claire finally made it back to her penthouse suite. She stood in the shower for 30 minutes, watching black water swirl down the drain. The grease took forever to wash off. The soot had gotten everywhere. When she finally stepped out and looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her hair was a mess. Her face was pale and exhausted. Bruises were forming on her arms from the crush of the crowd. Her ankle was swollen to twice its normal size. She looked terrible. She looked real. Claire wrapped herself in a robe and sat on her bed. The room was perfectly decorated, perfectly clean, perfectly empty. She picked up her phone. 47 missed calls from Preston. She deleted them all. Then she opened her laptop and pulled up the hotel's personnel files. It took her 20 minutes to find what she was looking for. The maintenance department's complaint logs, going back 3 years. Page after page of Marcus's reports, each one carefully documenting safety issues, each one marked denied with her father's signature. He'd been trying to save them for years, and they'd treated him like he didn't matter. Claire printed everything, every report, every denied request, every warning that had been ignored. The stack of papers grew thick. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Higgins. Marcus is in the basement, packing his locker. He thinks you're going to fire him. Claire's heart clenched. She stood up, ignoring the pain in her ankle. She threw on jeans and a sweater, the simplest clothes she owned. No makeup, no jewelry, no armor. Then she grabbed the stack of papers and headed for the elevator. It was time to stop running. The basement was quiet in the morning light that filtered through the high windows. Claire found Marcus in the maintenance office, putting his tools into a cardboard box. Mrs. Higgins stood nearby, her eyes sad. Marcus looked up when Claire entered. His face was carefully neutral. "Miss Sterling?" he said formally. "Claire," she corrected. "Please." Marcus set down the wrench he'd been holding. "I'm clearing out my locker. I figured you'd need to hire someone new. I'll have everything gone by—" "Stop." Claire crossed the room. "You're not fired." Marcus blinked. "I'm not?" "No. In fact, I'm here to offer you a job." "I already have a job." "A different job. Director of Operations." Claire took a breath. "Full authority over all maintenance, safety, and building systems. Budget approval power. A seat at management meetings. A salary that actually reflects what you're worth." Mrs. Higgins gasped softly. Marcus just stared at Claire. "Why would you do that?" "Because you're the only person in this entire building who actually knows what they're doing. Because you tried to save us all, and we didn't listen. Because—" Claire's voice caught. "Because you deserve it." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Claire, that's a nice offer, but we both know it won't work. Your father doesn't own this hotel anymore. Not really." Claire set the stack of papers on his desk. "These are copies of every maintenance request you filed, every denied repair, every corner that got cut. I'm giving them to the board of directors this afternoon." "You can't do that. You'll destroy your father. He destroyed himself when he chose profit over people." Claire met Marcus's eyes. "And I chose to be complicit by not paying attention. But I'm done with that. I'm done pretending things are fine when they're not." Marcus picked up the papers, flipping through them. His jaw tightened as he saw his own reports stacked up, proof of years of trying. "This will cause a scandal," he said quietly. "I know. Your father will never forgive you. I know. You'll lose everything." "Not everything." Claire stepped closer. "I'll lose the things that don't matter. The title, the money, the perfect image. But Marcus, tonight in that generator room, when we were working together, covered in grease, fighting to fix something that mattered, that's the first time in my life I felt like I was doing something real." Marcus set the papers down. "Claire, I know this is a lot. I know I don't deserve your trust after how I treated you. But I'm asking for a chance. Not just for the job, but—" She took a shaky breath. "I can't stop thinking about that moment before the door opened, when it was just us, when nothing else mattered." "You were grateful," Marcus said. "That's not the same as I was awake." Claire reached for his hand, the hand that had pulled her from the crowd, that had caught her on the ladder, that had held her when she was scared. "For the first time in my life, I was actually awake. And when I looked at you, I saw the person I want to be. Someone brave, someone honest, someone who fixes things instead of hiding from them." Marcus's fingers curled around hers. "What about Preston?" "I broke up with him an hour ago. Turns out it's easy to end something that was never real to begin with." Claire managed a small smile. "He took it well. He was mostly worried about what people would think." "And you don't care what people think?" "I care what one person thinks." Claire looked up at him. "I care what you think." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. And I think you're going to regret this." "Regret what?" "Standing here in a basement with a janitor, when you could be upstairs in a boardroom with people who look like they belong in your world." Claire stepped closer, until they were inches apart. "Marcus, you saved 100 people last night with nothing but a wrench and a flashlight. You kept your dignity when I was cruel to you. You risk your job every day trying to do the right thing. If that's not worth more than a boardroom, then I don't want any part of that world. Claire? Do you feel it? She whispered. What I feel? Or am I alone in this? Marcus raised his free hand to her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. You're not alone. Then he kissed her. It was gentle and careful. Nothing like the dramatic kisses in movies. It was real. The kiss of two people who'd survived something together and found each other on the other side. When they pulled apart, Claire was crying. What's wrong? Marcus asked, concerned. Nothing. Everything's right. That's the problem. She laughed through her tears. I've spent my whole life doing things perfectly, and none of it felt like this. Mrs. Higgins cleared her throat from the doorway. They'd forgotten she was there. She was beaming. About time, she said. Now, if you two are done being adorable, there's a press conference upstairs that needs the truth told. Claire wiped her eyes. You're right. Are you ready? Marcus looked at the stack of papers, then at Claire. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. I don't want to go back. Claire took his hand. I want to go forward. Together. Marcus smiled, that rare, transforming smile. Then let's go tell the truth. The press conference room was packed. Reporters filled every seat. Cameras lined the back wall. Elias stood at the podium with the hotel's lawyers, reading from the prepared statement about acts of God and emergency protocols. Claire walked in with Marcus at her side. The room went silent. Every eye turned to them. Claire in her simple clothes, Marcus in his maintenance uniform. Both of them walking together like equals. Elias stopped mid-sentence. Claire, this is not the time. Actually, it's exactly the time. Claire walked to the podium. Her father reluctantly stepped aside. She looked out at the crowd of reporters. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. My name is Claire Sterling, and I need to tell you what really happened last night. For the next 10 minutes, Claire told the truth. She explained the denied maintenance requests, the cheap parts, the warnings that were ignored. She held up Marcus's reports, showing date after date where safety was sacrificed for profit. Last night, this building failed because corners were cut, she said. The only reason we're all standing here is because Marcus Thorne, our head of maintenance, knew how to fix what was broken. He risked his life to save people who'd treated him as invisible. He is the hero of this story, not management, not PR. Him. Marcus stood against the wall, his face unreadable. Elias's face was red with fury, but he couldn't speak. The cameras were rolling. As of this morning, Claire continued, I'm resigning from my position as director. I will be staying on as a consultant to oversee a complete safety overhaul of this building, and I'm recommending to the board that Marcus Thorne be promoted to Director of Operations with full authority to implement every safety measure he deems necessary. The reporters erupted with questions. Claire ignored them all. She stepped down from the podium and walked directly to Marcus. How'd I do? She asked quietly. You just committed career suicide, he said. I know. She smiled. Feels amazing. Marcus shook his head, but he was smiling too. You're crazy. Probably. But I'm not alone, am I? He took her hand in front of everyone. No. You're not alone. The cameras flashed. Tomorrow's headlines would write themselves. But for the first time in her life, Claire didn't care about the headlines. She only cared about the man standing beside her and the truth they'd told together. 1 week later, the board of directors called an emergency meeting. Claire sat in the conference room with Marcus beside her. They'd spent the week cataloging every safety issue in the building. The list was 20 pages long. The board members filed in, grim-faced. Elias sat at the head of the table, looking like he'd aged 10 years. "This is a disaster," the CFO said, throwing down a financial report. "The stock price has dropped 12%. We're facing lawsuits. Advertisers are pulling out." "Good," Claire said. Everyone stared at her. "Good?" the CFO repeated. "Yes, because now we have to fix what's actually broken instead of just painting." "Over it." Claire pushed the maintenance report across the table. "Marcus has identified 200 critical safety issues. Some of them are small. Some of them could kill people. Every single one needs to be addressed." "That will cost millions," another board member said. "Then it costs millions." Claire's voice was firm. "We can afford it. This hotel makes $8 million a year in profit. We can afford to spend some of that on making sure it doesn't collapse." Elias slammed his hand on the table. "You don't have the authority to make these decisions." "Actually," the board chairman said quietly, "she does. We voted this morning. Claire will remain as a special advisor with full authority over safety operations, and Mr. Thorne has been appointed Director of Operations, as she recommended." Elias looked betrayed. "You're choosing her over me?" "We're choosing accountability over liability." The chairman looked tired. "Elias, you built something remarkable, but you've also been cutting corners for years, and it nearly killed people. It's time for new leadership." "So I'm out?" "You're retiring, with a generous package and the thanks of this board for your years of service. But yes, you're out." The room was silent. Elias stood up slowly. He looked at Claire with something between anger and sadness. "I hope you know what you've done," he said. "I do." Claire met his eyes without flinching. "I chose people over profit. I'm sorry you never taught me to do that sooner." Elias left without another word. Claire watched him go and felt nothing, no guilt, no regret, just a quiet sense of having done the right thing. Marcus touched her hand under the table. She squeezed his fingers. "Thank you," the chairman said to both of them. "This won't be easy. The repairs will take months. There will be more bad press, but it's the right thing to do." "It is," Marcus agreed. "And sir, I'd like to request something." "What's that?" "I want to personally inspect every Sterling property. Not just this hotel, but all of them. If this building had these problems, the others might too." The board members exchanged glances. "That's a big job," the chairman said. "I know, but someone needs to do it." Marcus's voice was steady. "I've spent 5 years trying to fix one building. Let me help fix them all." The chairman smiled. "Consider it approved." The meeting ended. Claire and Marcus walked out together, their hands linked. "You know what this means?" Claire said. "You'll be traveling constantly, inspecting buildings all over the country." "I know. It'll be exhausting." "I know." Claire stopped in the hallway. "Would you want company? On those trips?" Marcus turned to face her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I spent 28 years in one place, trying to be perfect. Maybe it's time I saw the world. Learned how things actually work." She smiled. "Plus, I'm getting pretty good with a wrench." Marcus laughed, and the sound echoed in the marble hallway. "You want to be my assistant?" "I want to be your partner, in every way that matters." He pulled her close. "You know people will talk. Let them. Your friends will judge you." "They weren't really my friends." "This won't be easy." "Nothing worth having is." Claire looked up at him. "I love you, Marcus. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you caught me on that ladder. When you could have let me fall, but you didn't." Marcus cupped her face in his hands. "I would never let you fall." "I know." She kissed him softly. "That's why I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing us." I love you too, he said against her lips. Even when you were terrible to me, I saw who you could be, and I'm so glad you finally saw it too. They stood together in the hallway, two people from different worlds who'd found each other in the darkness. And for the first time in her life, Claire felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 6 months later, the Sterling Grand Hotel looked different. Not on the surface. The marble still gleamed, the chandeliers still sparkled, the flowers in the lobby were still expensive and perfect. But underneath, everything had changed. Claire walked through the employee entrance at 7 in the morning, a coffee in each hand. She wore jeans and a work shirt with the Sterling logo embroidered on it. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup except a touch of mascara. She looked nothing like the woman who'd run this hotel 6 months ago. She looked better. "Morning, Claire," called out one of the housekeepers, Maria, pushing her cart down the hallway. "Morning, Maria. How's your daughter doing?" "Much better. Thank you for asking." Maria smiled warmly. "And thank you for the new healthcare plan. That physical therapy is really helping her." "I'm glad." Claire meant it. The new employee benefits package had been one of her first recommendations to the board. It cost money, but it was the right thing to do. She took the elevator down to the basement. The maintenance office was already buzzing with activity. Marcus stood at a large table covered with blueprints, discussing something with two of the new engineers they'd hired. He looked up when Claire entered, and his whole face lit up. "Morning," he said. "Morning." She handed him one of the coffees. "Black, 2 sugars." "You're perfect." "I know." She grinned at him, then turned to the engineers. "How's the reinforcement going?" "Right on schedule," one of them said, pointing to the blueprints. "We'll have the new support beams installed in the east wing by Friday. Then we can start on the updated electrical system." "Good." Claire studied the plans. 6 months ago, she wouldn't have understood any of this. Now she could read blueprints almost as well as Marcus could. "What about the windows?" "All replaced. Proper stress ratings this time. Those things will survive." "Anything." Marcus caught Claire's eye. She knew he was thinking about the same thing she was. That crack in the window that had started all of this. The crack she'd told him to make invisible. How different everything was now. "I have news," Claire said, pulling out her phone. "The inspector from the city called. We passed the final safety review. Perfect marks across the board." The room erupted in cheers. Marcus pulled Claire into a hug, lifting her off her feet. "You hear that? We did it." "You did it," she corrected. "I just learned from the best." "We did it together." He set her down but kept his arms around her. "Like everything else." Mrs. Higgins appeared in the doorway, beaming. "I heard the good news. This calls for celebration. I'm making my special cookies for the staff meeting." "You don't have to do that," Claire said. "Nonsense. You two have been working yourselves to the bone. We all have. We deserve some sweetness." Mrs. Higgins's eyes twinkled. "Speaking of which, when are you going to make an honest man out of him?" Claire laughed. "Mrs. H? What? I'm old. I can say what I want." She winked at Marcus. "Besides, I've got money on June. Don't let me down." She left, still chuckling. Marcus looked down at Claire. "Should I be worried that the staff is betting on our engagement?" "Probably." Claire's heart fluttered. They hadn't talked about marriage yet. They'd been too busy rebuilding the hotel, traveling to other properties, learning to build a life together. But the word hung in the air now, full of possibility. Marcus seemed to notice her reaction. His expression grew serious. "Claire, can I show you something?" "Of course." He led her out of the office, through the maze of basement corridors she now knew by heart. They took a service elevator up, then another, then another. "Where are we going?" Claire asked. "You'll see." They emerged onto the roof. Chicago spread out before them in the morning light. The lake sparkled to the east. The city's towers rose up like a forest of steel and glass. The air was cool and fresh, with a hint of spring. Marcus led her to the edge, where a small garden had been planted. It was Claire's project, turning the unused roof space into a break area for the staff. Flowers bloomed in neat rows. Benches sat in the shade of young trees. "It's beautiful up here," Claire said. "The tomatoes are already coming in. Maria says she wants to start a herb garden next." "That's not what I wanted to show you." Marcus turned to face her. He looked nervous, which was unusual for him. Marcus was always calm, always steady. "What is it?" Claire asked. Marcus took both her hands. 6 months ago, I was a janitor who nobody saw. I spent my days fixing things that people broke and didn't appreciate. I went home to my little apartment, took care of my mom, and tried not to think about how invisible I'd become. Claire squeezed his hands. She knew his mother had recovered well from her health issues, thanks to the better insurance Marcus now had. "Then one night," Marcus continued, "everything fell apart. The lights went out. And in that darkness, I found you. Really found you. Not the Ice Queen director who snapped orders, but Claire. The woman who was brave enough to climb down an elevator shaft in a ball gown. The woman who held a wrench steady while her hands shook. The woman who chose truth over comfort." "Marcus, let me finish." He smiled. "These past 6 months have been the best of my life. Not because of the promotion or the salary or the respect, but because I get to wake up every day and build something with you. We've inspected 15 hotels together. We've fixed hundreds of problems. We've made real change." "We have," Claire agreed. Tears were already forming in her eyes. She thought she knew where this was going. "But more than that," Marcus said softly, "you've taught me that I'm not invisible, that my voice matters, that I deserve to be seen." He let go of one of her hands and reached into his pocket. "And I want to spend the rest of my life seeing you. All of you, the messy parts, the broken parts, the beautiful parts." He pulled out a small box and opened it. Inside was a ring, not a massive diamond like the one Preston had given her. This was simpler, a silver band with a single stone that caught the morning light. "It's not fancy," Marcus said, "but it's real, like us." Claire's tears spilled over. "It's perfect." "Claire Sterling, will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out as a sob. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Marcus slid the ring onto her finger. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her while the sun rose over Chicago. When they finally broke apart, Claire was laughing and crying at the same time. "Mrs. Higgins is going to be so smug," she said. Marcus laughed too. "She'll take all the credit." "Probably." Claire looked at the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. "When did you plan this?" "I've been carrying that ring for 2 months. I was just waiting for the right moment." "This is perfect." Claire looked around the rooftop garden. "I love it up here. It's where the staff come to breathe, to rest, to remember they're human." "That's why I chose it." Marcus touched her face gently. "This hotel used to be a place where people like me were invisible. Now it's becoming something better. A place where everyone matters. And you made that happen." "We made it happen. Together," Marcus agreed. They stood holding each other, looking out over the city. So much had changed. So much was still changing. Claire thought about her father. They hadn't spoken since the board meeting. He'd retired to a house in Florida, bitter and alone. Sometimes she felt sad about that, but mostly she felt free. She thought about Preston, who'd gotten engaged to someone else within a month. A woman who looked good in photos and said the right things at parties. They deserved each other. She thought about the Claire she used to be, anxious, controlling, desperate for approval she'd never get. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone real. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked. "How far I've fallen," Claire said. Marcus pulled back, concerned. "What?" Claire smiled. "I used to live in a penthouse. Now I live in a regular apartment. I used to have a closet full of designer clothes. Now I wear jeans and work boots. I used to spend my days in boardrooms. Now I spend them in basements and on construction sites." "Claire, I've lost my title, my inheritance, my perfect life." She looked up at him. "And I've never been happier. Falling was the best thing that ever happened to me, because you caught me." Marcus's eyes were bright. "I'll always catch you." "I know." She kissed him softly. "That's why I'm not afraid anymore." They stayed on the roof until their radios crackled with the morning's first problems. Leak on the third floor. A guest complaint about the air conditioning. The normal chaos of running a hotel. But now, it was different. Now, they faced it together. That afternoon, Claire stood in the lobby greeting the new employee orientation group. 20 people filled the room: housekeepers, maintenance staff, front desk workers. They looked nervous, the way new employees always did. "Welcome to the Sterling Grand," Claire said. "My name is Claire Sterling, and this is Marcus Thorne, our Director of Operations. We're glad you're here." Marcus stepped forward. "Before we start, we want to tell you something important. This hotel runs on your work, not ours. You're the people who keep the lights on, who keep the rooms clean, who make guests feel welcome. You're not invisible here. You matter." Claire nodded. "We've learned that the hard way. This building used to run on the idea that some people matter more than others, that the people in expensive suits are more important than the people who actually do the work. We were wrong." She told them the story. Not all of it, but enough. The blackout, the journey through the basement, the generator that saved everyone's lives. "The person who saved this hotel was wearing a maintenance uniform," Claire said. "He knew how every system worked, because he'd been trying to fix them for years. And people like me didn't listen. We learned, though. And we're building something different now." One of the new housekeepers raised her hand tentatively. "What makes this place different?" Marcus smiled. "Fair wages, real health care, respect. When you report a problem, someone listens. When you have an idea, someone hears it. When you do good work, someone notices. And when you need help," Claire added, "someone helps you, because that's what decent people do." The orientation continued. Marcus explained the safety systems. Claire talked about the culture they were building. The new employees started to relax, to smile, to ask questions. Afterward, as people filtered out, one young man hung back. He was maybe 22, nervous, wearing a maintenance uniform. "Mr. Thorne," he said, "I just wanted to say, I'm glad I got this job. My last place, they treated us like we didn't exist. I heard this hotel was different now." Marcus shook his hand. "It is different. What's your name?" "David." "Well, David, welcome to the team. If you ever need anything, my door is always open. Literally. I work in the basement most days." David's eyes widened. "The Director of Operations works in the basement?" "That's where the real work is." Marcus grinned. "Come on, I'll show you around. Claire, you coming?" Right behind you. They took David down to the maintenance department. Marcus introduced him to everyone, showed him the new equipment, explained how things worked. Claire watched Marcus teach, and her heart swelled with pride. This was the man she was going to marry. Not because he looked good, in a suit, or said the right things at parties, but because he saw people, really saw them, and he made them feel like they mattered. That night, they had dinner with Mrs. Higgins at a little restaurant near the hotel. "I knew it!" Mrs. Higgins exclaimed when she saw Claire's ring. "I knew he'd ask soon. Let me see." Claire showed her the ring. Mrs. Higgins examined it with delight. "It's beautiful, simple and real, just like you two." She dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. "I'm so happy for you both." "We couldn't have done this without you," Claire said. "You believed in Marcus when everyone else dismissed him. You saw the best in both of us." "That's because I've been around long enough to know what matters." Mrs. Higgins reached across the table and took both their hands. "Love isn't about fancy things or perfect images. It's about two people who make each other better, who face the hard things together, who choose each other every single day." "That's what we want," Marcus said quietly. "Every single day." "Then you'll have it." Mrs. Higgins squeezed their hands. "Now, let's talk about the wedding. I'm thinking June, like I said. Garden ceremony on the rooftop, small and meaningful. What do you think?" Claire and Marcus looked at each other and laughed. "June sounds perfect," Claire said. They spent the rest of the evening planning, laughing, dreaming about the future. When they finally walked back to the hotel, they both still lived in the building, though in normal apartments now instead of penthouses. The night was clear and full of stars. "You know what's funny?" Claire said, holding Marcus's hand as they walked. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be marrying the janitor, I would have thought they were crazy." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And now?" "Now I know I'm marrying the smartest, bravest, most capable man I've ever met. Who happens to know how buildings work." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "The janitor part was just how we met. It's not who you are." "Who am I?" Claire thought about it. "You're the man who fixes broken things, including me." "You weren't broken. You were just lost." "Same difference." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Thank you for finding me, in the dark, in every way that matters." Marcus pulled her close. "Thank you for being brave enough to be found." They kissed under the stars while the city hummed around them. Above them, the Sterling Grand Hotel stood tall. Inside, the lights burned bright and steady. The heat flowed through modern pipes. The safety systems worked exactly as they should. It was just a building, steel and stone and glass. But it was also a testament to what happened when people chose to do the right thing. When they chose truth over image. When they chose to see the people who'd always been there, holding everything together. The wedding took place on a June afternoon, exactly when Mrs. Higgins had predicted. The rooftop garden was in full bloom. White flowers climbed trellises. Small tables held candles and simple arrangements. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't expensive. It was perfect. Claire wore a simple white dress, no designer label, no train that cost more than a car. Just a dress that made her feel beautiful. Marcus wore a suit, but he looked uncomfortable in it. Claire had laughed and told him to add his favorite work boots. "Be yourself," she'd said. So he did. The guests were small in number, but large in importance. Mrs. Higgins in the front row, crying happy tears. The maintenance staff, dressed in their best. The housekeepers. The new engineers. The people who made the hotel run. Marcus's mother was there, healthy and beaming. She'd told Claire last week that she'd never seen her son this happy. Claire's mother had come too, without Elias. They were separated now, heading toward divorce. Her mother had apologized for not standing up sooner. Claire had forgiven her. Some things took time. The ceremony was simple. No elaborate vows written by someone else. Just two people promising to love each other, to choose each other, to fix the broken things together. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Marcus pulled Claire close and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. The small crowd erupted in cheers. "I present to you," the officiant said with a smile, "Mr. and Mrs. Thorne." Marcus and Claire walked back down the aisle hand in hand, grinning like children. The reception was held right there on the roof. No ballroom, no crystal. Just good food, cold drinks, and people who genuinely cared about them. Mrs. Higgins gave a toast. "I've worked at this hotel for 20 years. I've seen a lot of people come and go. But I've never seen two people transform a place the way these two have. They didn't just fall in love. They fell into the truth. And that truth changed everything?" People clinked glasses. Claire wiped her eyes. Marcus pulled her onto the small dance floor they'd set up. "Mrs. Thorne," he said, taking her in his arms. "How does it feel?" "It feels right." Claire rested her head on his chest. "Everything about this feels right." They swayed to the music while the sun set over Chicago. The city glowed gold and pink in the evening light. "I have something to tell you," Marcus said. "What?" "The board approved our proposal. We're going to expand the safety program to all 32 Sterling properties, and they want us to head the project." Claire pulled back to look at him. "Are you serious?" "Completely. It's a 3-year commitment. We'll travel constantly, visit every hotel, every building, fix everything that needs fixing." "That's amazing." Claire's mind was already racing with possibilities. "We could implement standardized safety protocols, training programs, real accountability. We could change how the entire company operates. From the bottom up." Claire smiled. "I love it. It won't be glamorous, lots of basements, lots of boiler rooms." "Good." Claire kissed him. "I'm done with glamorous. I want real." Marcus held her tighter. "Then real is what we'll build, together." As the evening wore on, people danced and laughed and celebrated. The maintenance staff taught the front desk workers how to do a line dance. Mrs. Higgins cornered the chef about the menu for the staff cafeteria. Marcus's mother and Claire's mother discovered they both loved gardening and talked for an hour about roses. It was simple. It was joyful. It was everything a wedding should be. Later, when the party was winding down and the stars were bright overhead, Claire and Marcus stood at the edge of the roof. "Do you remember the first morning?" Claire asked. "When I yelled at you about the window?" "I remember." "If someone had told me then that 6 months later I'd be married to you, I would have thought they were insane." Marcus smiled. "What would you have thought was insane? That you'd marry someone, or that you'd marry the janitor?" "Both." Claire leaned into him. "I was so blind then, so focused on surfaces. I thought if everything looked perfect, it would be perfect. And now? Now I know that real things are messy. They require work. They show their scars." She touched his arm where the burn scar from the steam pipe had healed. "But they're stronger for it." "We're stronger for it," Marcus agreed. Claire looked out over the city. Somewhere down there, her father was living his life without her. Somewhere, Preston was planning his perfect wedding. Somewhere, the old version of herself was just a memory. She didn't miss any of it. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. Even when I didn't deserve your patience. Even when I was cruel. You saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself." Marcus turned her to face him. You want to know what I saw? What? Someone who was scared. Someone who was trying so hard to be perfect that she forgot to be real. Someone who needed to fall so she could learn to fly. He touched her face gently. I saw you, Claire. Not the director. Not the heiress. You. Claire's throat was tight with emotion. I love you so much. I love you too. Marcus kissed her forehead. And I'm going to keep loving you. Through all the messy, imperfect, real things. That's the promise. That's the promise? Claire echoed. They stood together on the rooftop of the Sterling Grand Hotel, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk into the light together. Below them, the building hummed with life. The systems Marcus had rebuilt worked perfectly. The staff Claire had learned to value went about their work with dignity and purpose. It was just a hotel, just a building. But it was also proof that broken things could be fixed, that people could change, that sometimes falling was the only way to find solid ground. And as Marcus and Claire held each other, under the stars, they knew this was just the beginning. They had 32 buildings to fix, 3 years of work, countless challenges ahead, but they would face them together. Because that's what love was. Not perfection, not image, not control. Love was two people choosing each other every single day, in the light and in the dark. Love was real, and real was all they'd ever need. The end.